All right, let's dive into one of the greatest, most fascinating mysteries of the entire digital age. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto, the person or people who created Bitcoin?
I mean, just think about it. What if you invented something that completely changed finance, kickstarted a brand new global industry, and then, just as it was starting to explode, you just disappeared? This isn't some sci-fi plot. It's the real-life riddle at the heart of Bitcoin. And in a world where we're all connected, where everything is tracked, this secret has somehow stayed a secret for over a decade.
And we're not just talking about fame here. Satoshi walked away from a personal fortune that, at its peak, was worth $100 billion. And get this, that money has never been touched. Not a single coin has moved. It just goes against every human instinct, which is exactly what makes this story so captivating.
So who is this ghost in the machine? To really wrap our heads around the mystery, we have to go back to the beginning. Back to Satoshi's very brief, incredibly brilliant, and just baffling time in the public eye.
It all started on Halloween of 2008, of all days. A name nobody had ever heard before, Satoshi Nakamoto, posts a white paper to a pretty obscure forum for cryptographers. The first reaction? Mostly a collective shrug. But then, come January 2009, the software is actually released. For the next 2 years, Satoshi is there, collaborating, tweaking the code, guiding the community. And then, in April 2011, radio silence. Poof! Gone. No goodbye, no explanation, nothing.
So to understand why this disappearing act is such a massive deal, we gotta quickly cover what this world-changing invention he left behind actually is. I mean, what problem was Bitcoin even trying to solve?
At its core, the idea is actually pretty simple. You know how your bank keeps a big central ledger of every transaction? Well, Bitcoin does the same thing, but its ledger, the blockchain, isn't owned by a single company. It's shared and maintained by a huge global network of computers. It's basically money managed by the crowd.
And this creates a huge break from the money we're all used to. Instead of being issued and controlled by governments and central banks, Bitcoin is decentralized. It's borderless. And here's the kicker. While governments can print more and more money, which causes inflation, Bitcoin has a hard-coded absolute limit of 21 million coins ever. It was literally designed to be independent. But you know, this whole idea of independence wasn't just some technical exercise. Bitcoin was born out of a very specific ideology, at a very specific and chaotic time in history. It was a statement.
This is our single biggest clue into Satoshi's motive. This exact headline from the Times of London was embedded directly into the code of the very first block of Bitcoin ever created. It's a timestamp, sure, but it's also a direct shot, a giant middle finger at the traditional banking system right in the heart of the 2008 financial crisis.
This message connects Bitcoin to a movement known as the cypherpunks. These were activists who believed that powerful cryptography could give power back to individuals. They deeply distrusted banks and governments. For decades, they have been dreaming of creating digital cash, but they always hit a wall with something called the double spending problem. Basically, how do you stop someone from spending the same digital dollar twice? Satoshi was the one who finally cracked that puzzle.
So, with Satoshi gone, a global detective story kicked off. I mean, how do you even begin to find someone who built their entire creation around privacy and then just vanished, leaving behind only the faintest digital trail?
Investigators had almost nothing to work with, so they obsessed over every tiny detail they could find. Things like the use of British or Commonwealth spellings like color instead of color, an almost old-fashioned habit of using two spaces after a period. They even analyzed the timestamps of every single forum post and email to try and reverse engineer what time zone Satoshi lived in.
And eventually, this analysis got way more high-tech. They started using a technique called stylometry. You can think of it as a kind of linguistic fingerprinting. Instead of focusing on obvious stuff like spelling, which is really easy to fake, it analyzes our subconscious patterns, the way we use common little words like of, and but. Everybody has a unique signature, and that is much, much harder to hide. So using these linguistic fingerprints and all the other breadcrumbs, where did the hunt lead? Well, the theories tend to fall into a few major buckets, and each one has some pretty convincing arguments.
This is really the fundamental question, right? Are we looking for a single lone genius with an unbelievable range of skills? Was it a coordinated team of experts who have somehow managed to keep the world's biggest secret? Or was it something else entirely, like an intelligence agency building some kind of financial tool?
Yeah, each theory has its trade-offs. The lone genius theory fits that consistent writing style. And hey, it's way easier for one person to keep a secret. But man, you'd need to be a world-class expert in cryptography, economics, coding, and law. A group explains that massive skill set, but you know what they say? 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. And the intelligence agency theory? It used to sound like a wild conspiracy, but as other suspects have been ruled out, it's starting to look a little more plausible to some folks.
But of all the individual candidates out there, one name always rises to the top of the list: Hal Finney. He was a legit pioneer in that cypherpunk movement, an absolute legend as a programmer, and he was the person who received the very first Bitcoin transaction from Satoshi himself. He was right there at ground zero.
And the case for him being Satoshi is strong. I mean, really strong. Everything just seemed to line up perfectly. He had the motive, he definitely had the technical skills, and he had the opportunity. For a lot of people chasing this mystery, he was the perfect fit.
But here's the thing with this story. Every time you think you found the answer, some little detail pops up that just doesn't quite fit. In Finney's case, it's a seemingly rock-solid alibi. There are public records of him running a 10K race at the exact same time that Satoshi was online sending emails. Now, could he have scheduled those emails to send automatically? Absolutely. But it introduces just enough doubt to keep the whole mystery alive.
So this brings us to the big question. After all of this time, all the investigations, all the high-tech linguistic analysis, why are we no closer to an answer? Why has Satoshi managed to stay a ghost?
Well, there are a few simple and kind of sad possibilities. Satoshi could have passed away sometime after he vanished. Or, in what would be the most incredible cosmic irony, maybe he just lost the private keys to that billion-dollar fortune. There's no password reset for Bitcoin, you know. But then there's a more strategic possibility. What if all those little clues we found, the British spelling, the double spaces, what if they were all planted as deliberate misdirection, designed to send everyone on a wild goose chase?
And this really gets to the real stakes here, because this mystery isn't just a fun internet riddle anymore. It's actually become critical to Bitcoin's stability. Think about it. If Satoshi were unmasked tomorrow and decided to sell their 1 million coins, it could crash the entire market. If they turned out to be a government or some controversial figure, it could shatter trust in the whole system. In a weird way, the creator's anonymity isn't a bug in the system anymore. It's become one of its most important features.
In the end, the hunt for Satoshi really reflects something deeper, something the writer John Updike captured perfectly when he wrote about another unsolvable mystery. When you look too closely at any single moment, when you scrutinize all the facts, the line between what's real, what's a coincidence, and what's a conspiracy starts to get really blurry. And maybe, in this story, the search for an answer actually tells us more than the answer itself ever could.